Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 205. This is a special whiskey holiday edition. Which holiday, you say? President's Day was last week. Today is February 24th, 2025, and yesterday was the 189th anniversary of the beginning of the Battle of the Alamo. This is a celebration of that battle and of Texas Independence Day coming up next week, March the 2nd. Texas Independence, therefore, is going to get a couple of episodes because I live here. I love Texas and have quite a few Texas whiskeys that need reviewing. So I'll take a short break from my Canadian whiskey tournament and we'll return to that effort after these. I've got a couple of Texas episodes, and then, of course, you've got St. Patrick's Day coming up. So I got to do a couple of Irish whiskeys, I guess. So it may be a month before we can get back to finish the Canadian whiskey tournament. Now, my shows are a little bit longer than most whiskey shows because I focus so much on the history of the whiskeys. And on these holiday shows, I go into even more history. So if all you want is a quick review, stand by because I take care of that first, and then I get into all the fine details, right? And at the end of the show, I will sample a cocktail made from this bourbon. We are looking at Alamo Black Label Bourbon for the anniversary of the Battle of the Alamo, coming to you from San Antonio, Texas, right? Founded in 2015, this bourbon is 45% ABV or 90 proof. Now, the bottle says, produced, aged, and bottled by Alamo Distilling. It does not say distilled by, and it does not say straight bourbon either. It does not have the Texas Certified Whiskey label. So what exactly is in here? I'm not real sure. But this 750 milliliter bottle cost me between $30 and $35, I think. But I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I got it at Total Wine. But they're not carrying it anymore. It could have been Specs, but they're not carrying it anymore. Goody Goody does have it listed, but I'm also real sure I didn't get it at Goody Goody. Goody Goody has it listed for $35.99, but out of stock. So there you go. Right now, you can't get this in Fort Worth, I don't think. And this is the second time I've had that problem with this whiskey. So those are the facts as I know them. Tasting notes. Now, Eric Waite, a pretty famous sommelier and whiskey connoisseur, his show, he went to San Antonio, and so he got some of this, and this is like 5 or 6 years ago. And he said that it's spicy, it's got some fresh cut wood notes, caramel, but he emphasizes the spiciness of it. My tasting, I agree. The spiciness is definitely there. And the website for this whiskey has nothing about their bourbon other than a picture, but I did find an older video that they put out, and every indication in that video was that they made it. I mean, they were back in the distillery, they were talking about the grain, they were showing the still and everything, and I'm thinking, why would they not put distilled by on the bottle? And I think the legal definition for that, or the legal reason, if you source your whiskey within the state, then you don't have to list, where it's sourced from. If you source it from out of state, you got to say distilled in Kentucky or distilled in Indiana or what have you. So this, watching that video, I mean, this looks like it's distilled at Alamo Distillery in San Antonio, but just the label is confusing. The website was close to useless, so I'm not sure. All right. So let's say my score for this whiskey was an 83, and the letter grade, which is drinkability, was a B+. And I struggled with that, B+ or A-. There's no Texas funk in here at all, none. And so that brought it down from an A- to a B+. For Texas whiskey, I really do look for the funk, and it's not there. Spicy and rich, yes. So B+. My recommendation, this is definitely worth a try if you can find it. Mine is almost gone, as you can tell. And if I see it again in Fort Worth, I'll buy it again. If the Texas funk scares you away, have no fear. This is funk free. Just the strong spiciness, which is very nice. If you want to celebrate Texas and the Alamo, get this bourbon right here. It compares very well to anything Kentucky has to offer. All right, let's go into the history now. History of the Battle of the Alamo. First, I'm going to sample this. That is really pretty good. The Battle of the Alamo. Okay, we're going to have to go back into a little bit of Mexican history here. Spain conquered Mexico in the early 16th century, of course, and they had mounted several explorations into what is known as Texas and beyond. Ultimately, they ruled Texas with a fairly light hand. It was mainly Indians. There's low population. They had to try to deal with all these various Indian tribes, and so Spain had a very light hand on Texas. Texas in the 19th century still didn't have much of a population, and under President Thomas Jefferson, the United States made a Louisiana purchase from France because France had bought the property from Spain, or they traded hand, I don't know, poker match, who knows. And so now America buys it from France. So that puts America on the border with Texas, which is Spanish territory. What the Louisiana purchase stretches on up the Missouri Basin, right? But that became a point of contention with Spain. The Americans on the border kept crossing the border. You've got this, the Spanish were saying that the territory ended at the river. The Americans were saying, no, but wait a minute, it goes beyond the river to the tributaries. And so it was in dispute, and it wasn't really settled until 1819 with the Adams-Onis Treaty, which gave America all the land of the drainage system, which is what America wanted. During this time, Mexico was in a state of upheaval, constant revolutions, revolting from Spanish control, trying to establish a republic, but then failing. They had different constitutions, different governments. In essence, Mexico was a chaotic mess. Enter what's called the American filibusters. Now, a filibuster we think of as a speech technique in the Senate to delay things, right? Or one guy stands up there and talks for 24 hours. No, the use of the term filibuster back in the 19th century, these were Americans who were trying to enter Texas, which again was chaotic. It was under Mexican authority, but very loosely held. They wanted to set up their own colonies or even their own separate countries. That's what these filibusters were doing. And so it was a confused, pitiful mess on the Americans' part and on the Mexicans' part. And the borders were not adequately defined or controlled. Finally, in 1821, Mexico began allowing organized immigration and settling from America. Sam Houston led a large group to settle in Texas. And when Santa Anna finally took over in Mexico with kind of an iron fist and changed the Constitution, well, it changed the government. Well, all these Texans, all these Americans who had settled with Sam Houston in Texas, they got upset because, wait a minute, this is not what we bargained for. You know, we came in under one Constitution, now you got another Constitution, and we don't like what you're doing. So that kind of set the tone for some discontented Texans. And so Santa Anna became very authoritative, centralizing the government, reduced the Texas delegation to their version of a Congress. And eventually the deal between Mexico and the American settlers was so disrupted that in October of 1835, the Texans and Tejanos revolted against Mexico. It wasn't just the white Anglos, it was the Tejanos in Texas as well. So Santa Anna replied with overwhelming force, while the Texians were just getting organized and were kind of scattered and weak. In Bexar County, Texas, San Antonio, basically Santa Anna's army of 2,000 besieged the Texians at the Alamo Mission, and there was only about 200 of them. And this siege lasted from February 23rd to March 6th. The Texians were led by Colonel William Travis. You had Jim Bowie there. You had Davy Crockett there. The battle ended finally, and it was a massacre. All the Texians were killed, except a few escaped. And this defeat, this massacre, united the response within Texas, and eventually the Texians defeated the Mexicans, and they wrote their own constitution, and you became the Republic of Texas. And so, that was in 1836. So what better way to celebrate the Battle of the Alamo than by drinking Alamo Black Label Bourbon? Here you go. All right, a detailed review. First of all, history of the bourbon. The company, Alamo Distilling, began in 2015, founded by Daniel Taylor and Noel Burns, but it moved locations around 2000. They moved their distillery, and of course COVID hit too, and so now they are in the vicinity of the Alamo, just a few blocks away. They are a small, very small craft distillery, and they seem to have trouble getting the whiskey distributed to Fort Worth. When I first saw this whiskey was about 5 or 6 years ago. Then it disappeared for a couple of years. Then it came back. I bought my bottle 2 years ago, I think, year and a half ago, and now it's disappeared again. However, there is a new Texas bourbon called Bucking Bull, and it says that is produced and bottled at the Alamo Distilling Company. So I don't know the financial arrangements there. The history of this is just a little bit confusing. I mentioned the video that I saw that added to the confusion. So only 4 out of 5 points for history. And that's a shame, because with a name like Alamo and where they're located, you ought to have a great history. Bottle, label, and marketing. While the bottle is kind of the standard short squatty thing that's common, I find the label to be reasonably attractive. I think it needs a picture of the Alamo on it, or Davy Crockett, or a cannon, something. The label makes a rookie error in saying that it is produced by Alamo. They did get Eric Waite to give a positive review on his channel, and Eric Waite's big time. So at any rate, I think there's some improvements that could be made here. Most of all, they could clear up, is this produced or distilled by Alamo? So bottle, label, and marketing, 4 out of 5. And again, it's unavailable right now. So visual appearance, only 3 points, because this looks fairly young. If they would age it more, or in the climate more, allow it to get darker and develop some Texas funk, I think that would improve. So only 3 points for visual appearance. And composition, on that mysterious older video that I found, this is a wheater. It uses corn, wheat, and barley. I don't know where the spiciness comes from, though. Usually wheat comes across as sweet and soft, and it's rye that comes across as spicy. So I'm just not sure. But it's pretty spicy, and that's good. It is kind of young. It's not listed as a straight bourbon, so it's less than 2 years. I think on the video they might have mentioned something like 6 months, and so this is really pretty young. But again, it looked like they were distilling their own. So composition, 13 points, and that's probably generous. Nosing, I get a vague sweetness, bourbon nose, but nothing special. Certainly no Texas funk. So my generic 7 points for nosing. Tasting, again, absent the Texas funk. But there's still some barrel notes, spiciness, like baking spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, dried fruit. So this is really pretty good. It's not boring at all. The spice notes are kind of up high in the tenor range, not down in the baritone range. The Jim Beam is kind of low. Its spiciness is a little bit lower because of they use a little bit more rye. So this is a bit higher. Overall, the taste here is quite pleasant. It is as good as a lot of Kentucky bourbons. Okay, so the price, $30 to $35, somewhere in there. So you're looking at the price of Woodford or Elijah Craig, and I would put this in those categories. I would definitely drink this in comparison to those two bourbons, certainly. So taste, 21 points. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It has a good mouthfeel for a 90 proofer. The spiciness is there, and it's close to a burn. The spiciness is kind of close to a burn. Maybe it's a burn with some spiciness blended very well together in a unique way. The burn is very appropriate for a 90 proof. There's no nasty ethanol thing at all, but it does burn in the mouth some. The finish concentrates on the spice. It's medium and pleasant. Lets you know you just had a whiskey. The burn doesn't go up into my sinuses. It kind of stays in the mouth and then in the throat a little bit. But it's all very appropriate. It's very enjoyable. So 13 points. Now, neat or mixer. This is very good neat. I made a small little cocktail with this the other day using Diet Coke and ice, and it was very nice. I'm going to make an old-fashioned here in just a little bit and show it to you, but as neat or mixer, the full 5 points. Price, value, and availability. Again, I did not record when I bought this or how much I paid for it, but I'm thinking Total Wine in the last couple of years for $30 to $35. But again, Goody Goody is the only place in town that has it listed for $35.99, but it's not even available there. It's out of stock. Total Wine and Specs didn't list it. So, I'm not sure if this is coming back or what the holdup is, but this is the second time I've had difficulty finding it. So I see it and it's gone for a while. I see it again and now it's gone for a while. So availability is an issue, but I think the price and value is good. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 points. Bonus points, go ahead and give it 5 bonus points. It's in San Antonio. It's called Alamo, and it's really pretty good. So 5 bonus points. That gives me a total score of 83. My letter grade for drinkability is a B+ because it loses points because it is so young and it doesn't have the Texas funk. And I really wish it did. So I think it could use another 6 months or a year to age, but I'm always wanting to spend other people's money. So nonetheless, I think it compares favorably to Elijah Craig or Woodford. My recommendation, if you want a Texas whiskey, I would say this is definitely worth a try if you can find it. Mine is almost gone, and if I see it again in Fort Worth, I will buy it again. Now, if the Texas funk scares you away, have no fear. It is funk-free. Very spicy for a wheater, if it in fact is a wheater. Again, there's some question about that. So if you want to celebrate Texas and the Alamo, get this bourbon. All right, let's take a break and make a cocktail. I'm back with my old fashioned. So I've got a couple of shots of the bourbon, 3 or 4 drops of Angostura bitters. I use maple syrup, some orange peel, and a couple of cherries. And that is wonderful. I'm in the process of learning cocktails, and so it's always experimental, but that will work for me. All right, next time on Stab the Dragon, we will have another Texas whiskey to celebrate Texas independence. Out here.